As I stood in my sister Melinda's apartment, I couldn't help but feel a sense of dread wash over me. My name is Brianna, and my life had just taken a drastic turn. A few days prior, I had been struggling with a mysterious illness, plagued by nausea and mild fever. Unable to bear it any longer, I had reached out to Melinda for help. She had raised me since I was 10 years old, after our parents passed away in a tragic accident. Despite being only 20 at the time, she had taken on the role of both sister and mother to me. Even now, as we both lived independently, our bond remained as strong as ever. Melinda took one look at my pale face and frowned. "Brianna, you look awful," she said, her voice laced with concern. "Have you checked your temperature?" I nodded, explaining that while I had a slight fever, it was the nausea that was really getting to me. Melinda pursed her lips, deep in thought. Then, she suggested something that made my heart skip a beat. "Brianna, I think we should do a pregnancy test, just to be sure," she said gently. I stared at her in shock, my mind reeling at the possibility. Melinda pointed out that with my symptoms, and having ruled out COVID and the flu, it was a possibility we needed to consider. She had even gone out and bought a test kit from the pharmacy, just in case. I couldn't believe it. Me, pregnant? It seemed so surreal. But with Melinda's encouragement, I took the test, my hands shaking as I waited for the results. When the 2 lines appeared, I felt my world tilt on its axis. "It's positive," I whispered, my voice barely audible. Melinda wrapped an arm around my shoulders, her presence a comforting anchor in the storm of my emotions. She explained that a positive test didn't necessarily mean I was definitely pregnant, and that we needed to see an OB/GYN to confirm and rule out any complications. I nodded, tears welling up in my eyes. "What am I going to do, Melinda?" I asked, my voice breaking. Melinda hugged me tightly, assuring me that we would take things one step at a time. First, we would get the confirmation from the doctor, and then we would reach out to Jeremy, my boyfriend of 4 years. Jeremy and I had started dating during our senior year of college, and while I had been considering the possibility of marriage, I had never imagined I would be facing an unplanned pregnancy. A few days later, Melinda accompanied me to the OB/GYN, where they confirmed that I was indeed 6 weeks pregnant. As the doctor pointed out the tiny heartbeat on the ultrasound screen, I felt a rush of love and protectiveness for the little life growing inside me. On the way home, Melinda turned to me, her eyes shining with tears. "Brianna, there's something I forgot to say earlier," she said softly. I looked at her, confused. "What is it?" Melinda smiled, pulling me into a tight hug. "Congratulations, little sister. I can't believe my baby sister is going to be a mom." I broke down in her arms, sobbing with a mix of joy and fear. While having a child out of wedlock wasn't as uncommon these days, I still felt a sense of guilt towards Melinda, who had sacrificed so much to raise me. I was afraid she would be angry or disappointed in me. But as always, Melinda surprised me with her unwavering love and support. She held me close, her smile never faltering as she reassured me that everything would be okay. In that moment, I realized that no matter how old I got, I would never stop looking up to my amazing big sister. Later that evening, Jeremy came over to Melinda's apartment, his face etched with concern. I took a deep breath and shared the news, watching as his eyes widened in shock. "We're having a baby?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Melinda cleared her throat, giving Jeremy a pointed look. "I think it's time we discussed your responsibilities as a man," she said firmly. Jeremy nodded, taking my hand in his. He apologized for not being there for me during this uncertain time and assured me that his feelings for me were genuine. He promised to report the news to his father immediately and to register our marriage as soon as possible. Looking into my eyes, Jeremy asked me to forgive him for not being more reliable in the past. He told me that he wanted to become a better man, someone I could depend on, and that he had been considering this for a long time, not just because of Melinda's words. Then, to my surprise, he got down on one knee and asked me to marry him. With tears in my eyes, I accepted, feeling a rush of love and gratitude for this wonderful man who had chosen to stand by my side. Melinda clapped her hands together, a grin spreading across her face. "Well, now that that's settled, we've got a lot of work to do," she exclaimed, already making plans for our wedding and the baby's arrival. And so, with my sister's unwavering support and Jeremy's commitment, we began the journey towards marriage and parenthood. Little did I know, the challenges that lay ahead would test us in ways we never could have imagined. When we went to inform Jeremy's father about our marriage, his reaction was explosive. He shouted at Jeremy, furious at the idea of his son marrying a woman from a humble background like mine. "I won't allow it," he roared, his face turning a mottled shade of red. "And get rid of that child. She's just after our family fortune, isn't she?" I flinched at his cruel words, tears stinging my eyes. "That's not true at all," I protested, my voice shaking. The truth was, Jeremy was the heir to Sandbranch Auto, a well-known local business. During our college years, I had witnessed firsthand the pressure he faced as the heir of his family. But I had never fallen for Jeremy because of his wealthy background. I stood my ground, my voice calm but firm as I pointed out that if I had been after a wealthy husband, I would have pushed for marriage much earlier in our 4-year relationship. But the truth was, I had never fallen for Jeremy because of his wealthy background. I loved him for his kind heart, his gentle smile, and the way he always made me feel cherished and safe. Mr. Sandbranch only grew more enraged at my words, accusing me of being a manipulative vixen who had deliberately gotten pregnant to trap his son. I flinched at his cruel words, tears stinging my eyes. "That's not true at all," I protested, my voice shaking. Just as I was about to respond, Melinda stepped forward, her voice steady and composed. She pointed out that it was unbecoming of a company president to hurl such insults at others. Mr. Sandbranch bristled at her words, demanding to know who she was. Melinda introduced herself as my sister and guardian, since our parents had passed away. Mr. Sandbranch scoffed, declaring that a family without parents was no match for his own bloodline. Melinda remained unfazed, expressing her disappointment in his behavior. She acknowledged that while Jeremy himself was a fine young man, his father's attitude would only bring me suffering. I watched helplessly as Jeremy tried to intervene, but Mr. Sandbranch brushed him off, dismissing us as mere paupers. Melinda calmly mentioned that Jeremy had given permission for this conversation to be recorded, causing Mr. Sandbranch to falter. She informed him that she would be consulting with a lawyer about his slanderous remarks, hinting at the damage such rumors could cause in their small hometown. Mr. Sandbranch sputtered in disbelief, accusing Melinda of trying to threaten him. But she remained composed, clarifying that she was not recording without permission and had only mentioned consulting a lawyer, not spreading the audio as blackmail for accepting our marriage. I couldn't help but think to myself that her words were pretty much a threat, but I kept quiet as Mr. Sandbranch fumed in impotent rage. Melinda pressed on, revealing my impressive educational background and career at Robotech Industries, a prestigious robotics company in Silicon Valley. She emphasized that while I would need to take maternity leave, my skills and experience would undoubtedly benefit their family business in the long run. Mr. Sandbranch demanded to know why we hadn't mentioned this earlier, but Jeremy pointed out that his father had been too busy ranting to listen to our side of the story. I stepped forward, my voice calm and measured. I explained that while I didn't believe a person's worth was solely determined by their education or career, I took pride in the fact that I had made it through the grueling college entrance exams and job interviews. I promised to acquire even more qualifications and skills if Mr. Sandbranch desired, vowing to become a supportive wife to Jeremy when he took over the company in the future. Mr. Sandbranch grudgingly agreed, but not before threatening divorce if I proved useless to the company. I watched as Jeremy's mother apologized for her husband's behavior, looking embarrassed and helpless. As we left the Sandbranch residence, I felt my knees buckle, the stress of the confrontation taking its toll. Jeremy rushed to support me, his face etched with concern. Melinda, however, rounded on him, demanding that he stand up to his father more firmly and not let me become a sacrificial lamb to his family's whims. Jeremy apologized profusely, vowing to become a stronger man like my sister. With Melinda's invaluable help, we managed to navigate the treacherous waters of his family's disapproval and officially registered our marriage. In the weeks that followed, I struggled with severe morning sickness, forcing me to take paid leave and switch to remote work. Little did I know that just 2 weeks after our tumultuous introduction to Jeremy's parents and our wedding, an even greater upheaval was about to unfold. Taylor was in the middle of belting out an old love song that her father used to be obsessed with when Jessica's phone rang. She answered it, her face etched with worry as she heard Andrew's voice on the other end. Andrew was a young man who had once been a boarder at Samuel's restaurant, Angel's Diner. He had graduated from high school this spring and was now working as a live-in employee at a historic inn called Peony Air Hotel in rural Vermont. They often chatted via video call, but for him to be calling Jessica's cell phone at this hour, Taylor knew something must be wrong. Taylor listened intently as Andrew explained the situation, her heart sinking with every word. He told her that there had been an arranged marriage meeting at the hotel where he worked, and unless he was mistaken, the groom-to-be was none other than Jeremy. Taylor chimed in, pointing out that arranged marriages weren't uncommon at historic hotel like the one where Andrew worked. But when Andrew mentioned Jeremy's name, Taylor felt her blood run cold. "Jeremy?" Taylor exclaimed, her voice rising in disbelief. Jeremy was one of her regular customers at Angel's Diner, along with his girlfriend, I and my sister Melinda. The three of us often came to eat together, and from what Tyler could tell, our relationship was serious enough to consider marriage. In fact, we had recently tied the knot after I discovered I was pregnant. We had just celebrated our happy news with Andrew joining us via video call. Taylor couldn't wrap her head around what Andrew was telling them. "Are you sure it wasn't just a doppelganger situation?" Taylor asked, hoping that there could been some mistake. But Andrew was certain. He told Taylor that the man's father had repeatedly called him Jeremy, leaving no doubt about his identity. Taylor's heart ached for me, knowing how devastating this news would be for me, especially in my delicate condition. Andrew apologized, saying that he couldn't reveal any more details due to confidentiality reasons, and that even sharing this much was pushing the boundaries. Taylor assured him that he had done the right thing by telling her and that she would handle the situation from here. As Taylor hung up the phone, she turned to her girls, her face etched with concern. Taylor asked them what they were going to do, but she knew that this wasn't a problem, they could just wait and see how it played out. "We need to call Brianna and Melinda right away," Taylor said, her voice firm with resolve. When my sister and I arrived at the diner, Taylor could see the confusion and worry on our faces. Taylor took a deep breath and explained what Andrew had told her, bracing herself for our reactions. To Tyler's surprise, Melinda and I exchanged a knowing look. "Actually, we already knew about the arranged marriage meeting," I said softly, my eyes filled with pain. Taylor was stunned. "What? How?" I reached into my purse and pulled out a sheet of paper, handing it to Taylor with trembling hands. Taylor couldn't believe her eyes when she saw what it was, a fully filled out divorce petition. "This arrived 2 weeks ago," I explained, my voice thick with emotion. "I tried to contact Jeremy right away to find out what was going on, but I couldn't reach him." Melinda chimed in, adding that we had even tried calling his company, but they refused to put us through to him. Taylor shook her head in disbelief, struggling to reconcile the caring, devoted Jeremy she knew with the man who would do something like this. "We didn't want to believe it either," Melinda said, sensing Taylor's thoughts. That's why we hired a private investigator to look into it. We just got the results back today. Taylor was shocked to learn that we had already taken such drastic measures. Melinda explained that we had been planning to come to her for advice on what to do next, and her call had simply accelerated our timeline. If there's anything they can do to help, just say the word, Taylor told us, her voice filled with determination. You've got the world's fiercest drag queen, a reformed delinquent, and 3 loyal sisters who would do anything for you. We'd say that's a pretty reliable support system, wouldn't we? Melinda smiled, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. You're right, she said, nodding. So, here's the plan. Meanwhile, at the Sandbranch residence, Jeremy's father was gloating over a new business opportunity. He had received a request from YUK, a trendy company that specialized in everything from fashion to camping gear, to produce a limited run of 10 vehicles with custom wrapping. Jeremy tried to express his reservations, but his father brushed him off, too caught up in his excitement over the potential profits. The only thing that seemed to bother him was the fact that the meeting with YUK was taking place at a modest diner rather than a high-end venue like the Peony Air Hotel they had visited previously. Jeremy insisted that they hurry to the meeting, as the location had been chosen by YUK. Jeremy's father felt a sense of unease as they entered the modest diner, wondering why such an important business deal was being conducted in such an unassuming place. As they approached the table, Jeremy's father was shocked to see Melinda sitting there, a small smile playing on her lips. She greeted Mr. Sandbranch politely, but his reaction was explosive. He sputtered in disbelief, demanding to know why she was there when he thought they had cut ties with his family. Melinda remained calm, her voice steady as she pointed out his wrongdoings. She accused him of sending the divorce papers without Jeremy's knowledge and even breaking his son's phone to prevent him from contacting me. Mr. Sandbranch tried to play dumb, denying any involvement. But I stepped forward, my eyes flashing with anger. I told him that playing innocent was useless, as we had gathered all the evidence against him. It turned out that Jeremy had never betrayed me at all. Melinda explained that as soon as I saw the divorce papers, I knew they weren't in Jeremy's handwriting. The difference was too stark to ignore. Samuel turned to me, his eyes wide with surprise. What do you mean? He asked, trying to understand the situation. I explained that my first thought had been of my father-in-law, but I had been afraid to confront him directly, fearing for my safety as a pregnant woman. I had felt trapped, unable to take action in case he lashed out at me physically. Samuel nodded in understanding, assuring me that I had made the right call. So, what did you do? He asked, his curiosity piqued. I revealed that I had received a call from Jeremy on a payphone. I had been overjoyed to hear his voice, and he had apologized profusely for making me worry. He had explained that his father had forced his mother to write the divorce papers, threatening to ruin the family business if Jeremy didn't comply. Jeremy had begged me to trust him and promised that he would never divorce me. He had asked me to hire a private investigator to look into his father's activities, suspecting that the company was in financial trouble. He had also mentioned being pressured into an arranged marriage with the daughter of a rising corporation, Yakshi Industries. It was a strategic move to boost Sandbranch Auto's reputation and finances, at the expense of Jeremy's own happiness. I had been appalled at the idea of a forced political marriage, but had agreed to follow Jeremy's lead. I had promised to believe in him and stand by his side, no matter what. Melinda then revealed that the documents they had gathered were not about Jeremy, but about his father's misdeeds. I apologized to Samuel and Taylor for the surprise, but Samuel waved off my concerns, eager to know what our next move would be. Melinda's eyes glinted dangerously as she contemplated how far to take our revenge. I shuddered at the sight, reminded of the rumors I had heard about her fierce reputation in high school. They had called her Melinda the Demon, and I could see why. I presented the evidence we had collected from the private investigator, showing that Sandbranch Auto's performance had been declining, leading Mr. Sandbranch to pressure his employees with aggressive sales tactics and unrealistic quotas. Anonymous interviews with the staff had revealed a pattern of abuse and exploitation. Mr. Sandbranch's face turned a mottled shade of red as he listened to the damning evidence. I added that the employees were considering a class action lawsuit against him for his abusive behavior and that I had even agreed to submit the audio recording from our meeting as evidence. Mr. Sandbranch sputtered in disbelief, insisting that this meeting was supposed to be about a business deal with YUK. But Melinda stepped forward, a triumphant smile on her face. She introduced herself as the sales representative for YUK, the company she had founded with her husband. Mr. Sandbranch's eyes widened in shock as he realized the trap he had walked into. Melinda revealed that YUK was the company she had founded with her husband. She explained that thanks to a successful social media strategy, the business was now thriving. She confirmed that their interest in the vehicle wrapping project was genuine. Mr. Sandbranch's face turned red as he pleaded for help, claiming that a large corporation had recently set up shop in the area and stolen many of his longtime clients. He cursed them as ungrateful, but I couldn't help but feel that he had brought this upon himself. I stepped forward, my voice calm but firm. I told him that his customers had left because of his own lack of sincerity. Many of them had simply waited for the changing of the vehicles to finally cut ties with him, having endured his mistreatment for far too long. Mr. Sandbranch sputtered in disbelief, his eyes wide with shock. Jeremy spoke up, his voice filled with resignation. He told his father that it was time to close down the company, but Mr. Sandbranch refused, insisting that he would fight any lawsuit and come out victorious. Jeremy shook his head, disappointment etched in every line of his face. He announced that he was quitting the company and, of course, rejecting the arranged marriage. He added that he had already informed the other family of our existing marriage and my pregnancy, much to their anger. Mr. Sandbranch's eyes bulged with fury as he accused Jeremy of betraying his own father. But Jeremy stood his ground, declaring that he was thoroughly ashamed to have such a man as a parent. He vowed to start from scratch and build a new life to support our growing family, wishing his father well with a hint of sarcasm. As Mr. Sandbranch sputtered and raged, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over me. It was clear now that he was the only villain in this story, driven by his own greed and ego to cause so much pain and trouble for everyone around him. A few weeks later, Jeremy stopped by Angel's Diner to pick up an order of spring rolls for me. I had been craving them amid a bout of severe morning sickness and was touched by his thoughtfulness. Samuel greeted him warmly, asking about my well-being. Jeremy explained that I was at home, struggling with the nausea and fatigue of early pregnancy. Samuel nodded in understanding, remembering well the challenges of those first few months. He asked Jeremy about his job search, and Jeremy's face lit up with a smile. He told Samuel that he had received 3 job offers and had chosen the one he felt was the best fit for his skills and experience. He promised to work hard and make the most of this fresh start, eager to provide for our growing family. When Samuel inquired about his father's company, Jeremy admitted that he didn't know all the details, but he had heard that it had gone bankrupt and Mr. Sandbranch was now facing lawsuits from his former employees. Jeremy acknowledged that he bore some responsibility for the situation and was actively working to help his former colleagues find new jobs. Samuel assured him of his continued support and encouraged him to keep pushing forward, even if there was still a long way to go before everything was fully resolved. As Jeremy left, he asked Samuel to pass along a message to Andrew, promising to bring our whole family to stay at the hotel once the baby was born. Melinda had apparently expressed a strong desire to visit as well. Samuel smiled, knowing how much the gesture would mean to Andrew. As he watched Jeremy walk out the door, spring rolls in hand, he felt a sense of pride and admiration for the man he had become. Despite all the challenges and heartbreak he had faced, Jeremy had emerged stronger and more determined than ever to build a happy life with me and our child. Samuel knew that whatever lay ahead, we would face it together, surrounded by the love and support of our chosen family.